podcasting will be a thrill. Grandpa and chill, grandson and friends. Grandpa and chill in full effect. We talk about it all, yeah, put it all on the set with that pet craze too. We chillin' with Rosie, come through, stay tuned, yeah, listen closely. Cause this the millennials and the silent generation coming together, discussion in rotation. This is Grandpa and Chill.
Hey everybody, I'm Brandon Fox. You're listening to another episode of Grandpa and Chill. I'm with our amazing producer, as always, Sierra, my good friend and co-host, Phines, and my relative, Grandpa. Today we have an incredible special guest. If you could tell everybody your name, Doctor.
Yes, I'm Alan Lindemann, and I graduated medical school in 1977.
Awesome. And cool. That's my intro. I don't want to interrupt the flow of conversation. But if you could just tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we dive in.
Well, I graduated residency in 1981 from what is called Regions Hospital today. It was St. Paul Ramsey Hospital, of course, in St. Paul when I was there. And I've delivered about 6,000 babies, no maternal mortality, and not even any eclampsia, and that would be a seizure associated with preeclampsia. No mothers in the nursing home. So we had a good, fun career, but it's taken every minute of my day to make sure that my patients do well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how rare is that? 6,000 deliveries, no mortalities.
Well, I think it's, there's a lot of people that say, yes, that's no big accomplishment. A lot of people do that. I have to say, in my first month of private practice, and this is back in 1989, I delivered 46 babies, and that's like a 3-person practice. So, and everybody did fine. I had no trouble with anything.
Mm-hmm. And is a lot of that sort of negligence on your colleagues, or what leads to a lot of these infant mortality or mother mortality?
Well, I can tell you a little bit. This is a story that I read on NPR, so it's public. The patient's name is Lauren, and she's a 33-year-old NICU nurse, NICU nurse. She came in at term. Everything was supposed to be fine. She had hypertension. She delivered her baby vaginally. And 5 hours after she delivered, she stroked. And 5 hours after that, she died. And if that had been my patient, I would have been there with her. Her doctor didn't come in to take care of her. He didn't come in to say, oh, gee, we have to do this to get her blood pressure down so she doesn't seize. Instead, her care was fragmented. Her doctor called a neurosurgeon who couldn't do anything because he had to wait for medications for 5 hours. So this is the kind of thing that causes trouble. Doctors have to be there to take care of their patients. They have to care about it.
What do you think that the sort of underlying mission of the United States healthcare system is, overarching?
Well, that's pretty complicated. Right now, we are really fragmented. We have many of the systems that are supposed to be working that you would think would be working, like Medicaid, Medicare, our insurances, malpractice, the American College of OBGYN, rather than opening access. In other words, letting patients get the care they need to get in an unlimited amount, they put barriers up so that it's difficult to take care of patients. One of the big problems we have today is we cut off our postpartum care at 6 weeks, and we are the only nation in the world that does that. And unfortunately, one of the things we're seeing because of that is mental health issues. And the main mental health issue, there are two. One of them is suicide, and one of them is drug overdose. These things should be preventable, and I think if we could deliver postpartum care without barriers for 1 year and unlimited amounts, we would be dealing better with this problem than we are right now.
How much is the right amount of time
Well,
for? Yeah.
if you look at countries that do better than we do, for example, if you look at the Scandinavian countries, they have a maternal mortality rate between 2 and 3 per 100,000. You look at ours, we've got between 20 and 55 per 100,000 based on the color of your skin.
hmm But
Does
so
that, does, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, just wait. Did I miss the? So how long should you have time to
1 year. 1
1
year
year?
is what
Wow.
everybody else does, and that's what we should be doing too.
Because most of the people that make laws
I
about
guess
like
the
women's
cost of
health care,
healthcare has gotten so high in the United States, and the cost of insurance for for people that aren't of a lot of means is part of the reason for this problem. Is it when you say it's related to the to whether you're a black person, a white person, or whatever? Is it related to that, or is it related more to their financial situation?
Well, certainly social economic conditions, deprivation, difficulty finding money, finding work, those are all barriers to the healthcare system we have today. And yes, the expense is awful. If you compare the United States and Canada, our prenatal care costs twice as much as theirs, and we have results that are twice as bad.
Mm, that doesn't sound right.
No, it's certainly, in short, we have a lot of work to do, and we have to get started on it.
Well, it sounds like we don't really care so much about our people as
Well,
overall.
as soon as we get started we have to think about how do we deliver medical care. And again, when you're looking at prenatal care, I had an independent practice for many years, and I saw my patients as much as they needed to be seen. Whether I got paid for 8 visits or whether the patient was seen 12 or 15 times, it didn't matter to me. I was the only boss. I was the only one I had to argue with. There were no CEOs, no insurance companies. I just did it,
Wow.
and it worked.
How did you do it without insurance companies?
Well, of course, they paid for 8 visits, so that was fine. So that's what I had to be satisfied with, was what they did pay. I had a lot of Medicaid patients. In those days, when I was first practicing, a delivery would be about $1,500. Of course, today it's much, much more than that.
yeah.
You mentioned a figure of 2 mortalities for 100,000 in one of the Scandinavian countries, and something like, I think you said 40 per 100,000 in the United States. Are my figures right?
You are right if you're looking at Native Americans and Native Alaskans. If you're looking at Caucasians, you're looking about 23 per 100,000. If you're looking at people of color, you're looking at about 55 per 100,000. So there's a great disparity.
Yeah, it's like 10 to 25 times the rate of mortality. And is that due to their ability to get post care after the?
A lot of it has to do with socioeconomic problems, and of course, we do have a limit on our postpartum care. And we talked about the number one problem we have now with postpartum care is suicides and drug overdose. So if we looked at our patients for a year, I think we could do much better with our suicides and our drug overdose. Suicide is a result of depression. It's a result of untreated depression. So if we treated our depression better, or tried to avoid it, we would do a better job.
Mm-hmm.
And would that be handled by an OB doctor or by a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever?
Well, you have hit on a really important point there. When I was working in Fargo, which is when I had my busiest OB practice, I would see my patients, I'd see my dads, my moms, and their children in their prenatal care, and I'd try to avoid depression. But for the few that came in who said they were depressed postpartum, I had a good psychiatrist I could call. We could agree on a treatment plan with medications. She would see the patients the next week, and nobody suicided.
So a lot of the problem is with the depression, that postpartum depression.
It certainly is. The other problem is, if I were just going to send the average depressed patient to a psychiatrist, it would take 3 months to get them in, and you could have a lot of suicide in that 3 months.
Yeah.
But they would also criticize me for managing the depression.
What about statistically on the childbirth itself? Complications in childbirth or whatever. How are the statistics on those? Relative to the racial differences, the differences in countries, and so forth.
Yeah, right now, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'd be willing to bet that we do have problems with our neonatal outcomes. I don't think it's quite as bad. I mean, naturally, the mortality rate for babies is per 1,000, not per 100,000. So you can tell right away that there's going to be more mortality for babies than for moms. But I'd be willing to bet the same people who have the trouble with maternal mortality are also the ones who have trouble with neonatal mortality. And I've read recently, again, this is Twitter, you can come up with a $5 million bill for a baby in the NICU.
What's that mean?
Oh, NICU. Neonatal intensive
No.
care
I know what NICU means, but you said a $5,000.
$5 million
bill.
bill.
$5. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's expensive.
Go ahead, Sierra. I'm sorry.
What has with regard to the mother mortality rates and things like that?
Who's on right now? Oh, it
Me?
must be Sierra.
Yeah.
Hi, Sierra.
Hi. With regard to the motherhood
Can you
mortality
hear me, Sierra?
rates. Yeah. Can you hear? You can't hear me?
I can hear you really well. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I hear you, Sierra.
So what is your experience with medical racism?
So, like, if you wanted to go into the practice of just general medicine right now, say, couldn't you do that?
What is going
Your
on?
area?
Yes,
What's happening?
that's one of the things that has happened. I have, for the last several years, just been in general medicine because in the small town I live in, we don't do OB anymore. Patients have to go 85 miles to OB to get OB. So, Sierra, you had a question.
Yes.
It was about a discrimination. Is that correct?
Yes.
I have done some reading on this, some investigation. As it turns out that doctors of color treat women of color as badly as the white doctors treat black women. So you're not going to gain a whole lot of improvement by finding a doctor of color. Unfortunately, I think that's because we're all trained the same way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sierra, you're the only woman here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. I'm the lone wolf.
Can hear us.
I have I actually have a
this is
fear of
great.
pregnancy, so this is all like really interesting to me.
I sort of heard a little background noise, but
One of the things I'd like to tell you,
Sure.
this is one of the things we talk about on our websites. Choose your doctor well.
I know.
And you can doctor shop if you want to. I had a lot of patients who came to see me as a third or fourth choice. They would generally stay with me. But you can tell a lot if you can just sit down and talk with your doctor. If they'll give you 15 minutes, be 2 feet from you, look you in the eye, and listen to what you have to say, and try to answer your questions in a responsive and responsible way. Those are the things you need to try to look for. The other thing you can ask them is, who's going to deliver my baby? And how many doctors and nurses am I going to see in this process? Ideally, you'd like to see one doctor during every prenatal visit, and you'd like to have that doctor there for your delivery at the time you deliver. And I think that's one of the reasons I had no maternal mortality and we had some very good results, is because I was there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a percentage difference in the situation, prenatal or whatever, between the delivery made by a OBGYN or I guess it's called a midwife?
Well, it depends on what country you look at. It depends on what kind of delivery you're getting. But again, if you go to the Scandinavian countries where the maternal mortality is 2 or 3 per thousand, or per 100,000, they have 3 choices. They can deliver with a midwife at home, they can deliver in a birthing center, or they can deliver with a doctor in the hospital. Here in this country, the American College of OBGYN doesn't particularly like home births, and they also don't really like birthing center births. But we don't really do a very good job, even if we get our patients to the hospital. So if you look at the Scandinavian countries, they do a really good job of doing their deliveries at home with a midwife.
Mm-hmm.
But are you saying that is not the case in the United States?
It certainly isn't. We have, I would say, probably 3% of deliveries occur at home. Now, my wife's daughter-in-law has delivered 8 children, and 6 of them have been at home, and she's had no trouble with her home birth, and one of them weighed over 10 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So, just because you have a delivery and just because you deliver at home doesn't mean it's going to turn out badly.
Right.
The ACOG does have recommendations for in-home delivery. They say you should be 15 minutes from the hospital and you should be on the ground floor. In other words, they don't want to be trying to take you up and down stairs when you're trying to get on your way to a cesarean section in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Oh. That makes sense. I think I have some comments. There's a couple things, a lot of cool things that you were saying. What I'll say about Black doctors and the training of our society and the treatment of Black women in the medical field. I still lean on though putting as many people of color in those situations to change the system that we're in, and not that you were against it, but just in general, I just think that it's like that was just my little 2 cents for that. And there was something else. 6,000 babies is amazing. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, you were going to say, you were talking about not enough Black doctors, right? They get diluted by the white doctors. And yes, I think that if we're going to get rid of our disparity, if we're going to treat everybody the same way, we have to have training that represents the percentage of people. In other words,
without a doubt.
And they're still teaching people that we have we got extra muscles in our legs and that we don't process pain differently the same way. They're still telling people that.
And this is. I'm sorry. I don't.
I believe, today if you talk to the people who are in kind of control of this, they say, well, our population is aging. In other words, the maternal mortality rate is up because we have old mothers now, over 35, and because they're fat, and because they smoke, and because they drink too much, and because they don't have they don't have enough money. I think the main thing is not enough money, not good working circumstances, not good living circumstances. If your family depends on your wage as a food server, for example, you probably don't get to stay at home very often if you want to get paid.
Definitely.
Right. Okay, yeah. This is about. I'm sorry. This is a question I'm wondering about because I just gotta know. How many Black women have you have you out of that 6,000? And out of those 8 that are. This is just me wondering because of the high ratios of issues, and I'm like, well, maybe he's just using white people the whole time, and he's like, yeah, no.
I have to tell you that North Dakota is very homogeneous. We have a lot of Norwegians, we have a lot of German, we have some French, we have some English, some Irish. We don't have many people of color. I can tell you this: I have delivered many women of color, and I have not had any problems with their pregnancies or their deliveries or their babies. So I couldn't tell you, of the 6,000, I couldn't tell you exactly. It's not a lot. I have to tell you, though, in St. Paul, there's a lot of people of color, and we had a lot of Hmongs, we had a lot of diversity, and we had no trouble with our patients of color in St. Paul during my residency.
Nice. I'm
Wonderful.
happy for it. Yeah. Now that was just one of my questions. I was kicking back and I was like, this had it. I was trying to do what.
You're absolutely right. We are homogeneous. So, but again, I don't think there's anything intrinsically different about color. I think that your bodies are just as good. The bodies of the Black people are just as good or better than the bodies of the white people. I don't think there's anything to be said for, well, you smoke more, you drink more. I don't think that's true at all.
I think a big issue goes into the stress, like you said, the social economics of the average patient of color that you may encounter.
I have a question for you, Dr. Lindemann.
Yes.
Unless Phines has Phines.
No, I don't think Sierra was done. Go ahead, Sierra.
Okay. This is kind of a different subject, but I read years ago of
Grandpa Sierra wasn't done. I don't know if you're on a lag. But...
he can't hear Sierra.
I don't know why you can't hear me.
Go back to your question.
That's so weird.
We'll take Grandpa's question in a minute, okay?
Okay.
Go back to your question, please.
You can't hear Sierra at all, Grandpa?
No, there's something weird going on.
A still screen for her.
I don't know what's going. Okay, so I was just gonna say it. I think you're
Let me
definitely
go ahead and ask
right.
my question.
All right,
Dr.
go ahead.
Lindemann?
Yes.
I'm loving this.
What's going on here? Years ago, I read in a paper where a young girl, she was of high school age, went into the ladies' restroom, had a baby, came out and went dancing. And I've been around women, around my wives who had children. They suffered a lot of pain and discomfort for a long period of time. How is it that a young woman, could have a child in a bathroom, come out, and then go back into a dance?
Well, I would say that would be extremely unusual, because most women, they'd at least have an umbilical cord hanging out, or they'd have a placenta that they'd deliver on the dance floor. or blood or something. So it would be very, very unusual. Now, one way that could possibly work is if it were like her third or fourth child. But I did have one patient who had 3 children by the time she was 18, but that was just one.
Yeah, and who knows what's real in the newspaper,
Well,
some people are just, he can't hear me, but some people are just nasty, some people.
I'm sorry if I interrupted anybody, Sierra. I can't hear you at all. I'm just have a still image.
Tell him it's okay.
Grandpa,
Brandon.
Sierra says it's okay. If you try and refresh your page, maybe you'll hear.
Oh, okay. All right, how do I do that?
Is that cool?
I muted myself.
Okay.
I feel like your comedic timing was on point, Grandpa. I think he hasn't been funnier. He missed it. Oh, man.
Oh, my gosh.
It's funny on many levels.
I love.
It's many levels. No, this is.
I'm going to say it while he's gone. I think you're absolutely right that the socioeconomic status is, I think a huge factor. And I think, overall, with that in mind, the eating habits, the all that stuff, I think the stress is the biggest part of that. The different stressors that you have, being someone that lives more paycheck to paycheck, or having different struggles and a constant, some people have a constant anxiety being a person of color in predominantly white areas. It could be your workplace, it could be your neighborhood where you live, you might be the only person of color. Those kind of things can cause a lot of different long-term stresses that I think affect our health a lot.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. But we need really to work on socioeconomic problems. And in order to do that, I think this, and I've talked about this before, the simplest thing would be to get unlimited prenatal care and unlimited postpartum care for up to a year. I think that would help. Because then at least you wouldn't have to worry about going to work to pay for your medical bills.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I read stories all the time online, on Reddit, of these different. That's probably why it's not helping my fear of pregnancy. But I read all these different stories. It's literally a different person every day is this woman who's yeah. So I just had a baby 3 days ago, and my husband is telling me that I really need to stop being so lazy and get up, and I'm still bleeding everywhere, and I'm still doing this and this and this, and I do have to go to work on Monday. So I'm just wondering, what do you guys think I should do? And they're you need to go to the hospital. I don't know. You just need help.
You sound like you've been reading Twitter, because I read Twitter and
yes.
I read those things. And I want to give you another example. Years ago, and this is one of the things that I thought was fun about OB, and one of the reasons that I decided to become an obstetrician, we could actually send our patients home when they were ready. One of the things we did on morning rounds, we listened to the nurses, and they would tell us, oh, this one is latching on, this one can breastfeed, this one knows what to do when she goes home, this one isn't having heavy bleeding, this one is. So when we sent them home, we knew what was going to be happening to them. Today, right. They get shoved out in a day, that is if they have a vaginal birth. And as it turns out, the women who stay 1 day have twice as much failure to thrive in their babies at 6 months as do the C-section moms who've been there for 3 days. So getting moms ready to launch is a really important thing, and we have completely junked that.
How about to say, you paying all that money? If I'm paying somebody staying there for a couple more days and that come out worse, that's out of control.
Right.
Yeah, this out of control. There was something I was going to say earlier about something. Oh, yeah. There just needs to be more, Dr. Alan Lindemann's in every community. And going back to the difference between the races. Yeah, there's no difference. I really think that there's, it's very, very, there's no the difference between me and you. But, I don't know if I got a neighborhood, Dr. Allen in my neighborhood, that was it.
Let me say I'm a dinosaur. So I probably will be made into oil fairly soon.
Fine stuff, I bet. And since we're made of the same thing and there's no difference, me too.
Me too.
At some point.
Same.
And that's one of the reasons I say try to find a doctor who at least you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Again, that's going to be more difficult than finding hens with teeth. And I don't know whether how much experience you have with hens. I have 60 of them here, but none of them have teeth. So.
Oh, see, fooled me. I was like, wow.
Can I ask you, Doc, what is the best way of going about something like that when each visit? Can you hear me, Grandpa? Oh, poor Grandpa. I ruined his. How do you go about going on 3 or 4 different doctor consultations when, for the uninsured or even with insurance and you haven't met your deductible, each one is a few $100s or excess of that over and over and over again?
Well, you're absolutely right. Back when I was, 40 years ago, all of this stuff was simpler than it is today. So, if somebody saw me and decided not to come back, maybe they got a $20 or $30 bill, but it wasn't $200 or $300. So yes, that's a real big problem today, but I think it's probably worth it, even if you have to pay for it out of your own pocket. If you can find somebody you're comfortable with, somebody who will see you and your family, and as many times as you need to be seen, and not complain about it, and see you the same doctor, the same provider sees you every time and comes for your delivery. Again, that's going to be pretty uncommon because we have what we call now the doctor on deck, the doc on deck. And the doc on deck is there for 24 hours. They deliver whoever comes in that time, and then they leave. My daughter she delivered about 10 years ago. She was in the hospital for a day and a half. She had 3 different doctors taking care of her during that time. So that's fragmented care. It's not good for anybody.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, $20 for a doctor's visit sounds very nice. Where do you think that sort of corruption or greed or you say that it's like a complicated system? Is that coming from the insurance companies? Is it the big hospital? Is it where is the center of a lot of these sort of outrageous bills and financial problems coming from?
Well, you see this book up there. It says Modern Medicine, What You're Dying to Know. We have 5 chapters that explains that. Now, we wrote that 30 years ago, but we were talking about the problems then that we have now. And of course, they're much worse today than they were then. But if you try to figure out a trail here, Medicare sets the stage for many things. Whatever Medicare does, insurance companies do. And everybody tries to balance the ledger on deprivation of care or denied access. And this is just fundamentally wrong because it's the thing that gets us our maternal mortality rate of 55 per 100,000 versus 2 per 100,000. So we need to have access to care. And that is insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, medical malpractice, the CEOs, ACOG. There's lots of people working against making affordable and accessible care for the public.
Are you the norm or the exception amongst your colleagues?
Oh.
Well, in the first place, I'm a big exception because I'm very offended by this. There are doctors who are also offended, and if you go to Twitter, you'll probably see them on Twitter. They're more now talking about doctor burnout. And there are 2 big factors for doctor burnout. One of them is having no control of your schedule. The other one is the electronic record. It's estimated now that in an average 11-hour day, doctors see patients for 5 hours, and they babysit the computer for 6 hours. That's totally messed up. We should be seeing our patients for at least 80% of the day, which is what we did before when we could write on charts. That is, actually have a piece of paper to write on.
Wow.
Okay.
didn't know that.
So you have to like log everything in
It
after
takes
your
up a lot of
visits.
time.
Yeah, it's just remarkably complicated. Some days, like at work here, there are some days when the whole computer system doesn't work at all.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're, busy on Saturday and Sunday trying to make up for the charts that didn't work on Tuesday.
Yeah.
You would think that the American Medical Association and the doctors would get together and certainly would have the power to change that.
Well, the American Medical Association is very useless. As a matter of fact, both doctors. Well, it's more than useless. It's in some ways harmful. There are many doctors now who don't even bother registering or paying for the AMA because the AMA, like I said, is part of the problem. They make tons of money off of coding, and the coding is one of the big problems we have with the electronic record.
No, it does sound like you're kind of revolutionary in a sense of, I'm sure there are more doctors on Twitter. I'm not really on Twitter, but it sounds like what you're doing it would seem like you would have lots of enemies, not lots of enemies, but you probably wouldn't be the most favorable person because you're kind of blowing a hole through the whole thing of like, it doesn't have to be this deep. You don't have to put this many hurdles in front of people to get care. And that doesn't seem like that would bode well for capitalism. Or how are you holding up? Are you safe?
So far, I haven't been threatened. I haven't had anybody come in here with an M16 or anything like that. No bombs, no car bombs. But I expect that sooner or later, I'm going to have some crap from various organizations. But there are getting to be more and more doctors who object to the problems that we have with the relationship between patients and doctors. As a matter of fact, many times a day, I think there are only two groups that don't matter anymore in healthcare. One is patients, one is doctors.
I can agree with that. Sometimes you guys remind me of like cashiers at a restaurant, and I mean that in like that's the treatment. I don't mean that, but there was something else I was saying.
Well, yes, it's getting to be more that way. One of the solutions that we see, there are a few brave doctors who do direct primary care. So for $50 or $75 a month, you can have unlimited access to those doctors. You can call them as many times as you want, and you can come in for as many visits as you want. You get your medications at cost, and you get your labs at cost. Naturally, insurance companies don't like that. They call us practicing insurance, but of course, insurance companies practice medicine. That's one of the problems with insurance companies. They hire a doctor, and the doctor does exactly what the insurance company tells them to do. So it's just it's a fake relationship.
There's a whole stand-up joke about doctors as being prostitutes to the insurance companies, or sex workers, sorry, better term. But there was an important question I wanted to ask you to bring this all around because it's Grandpa and Chill and there's an age thing going on. At what age did you feel like you were ready to start being to start putting like I'm sure you've been doing it your whole career, but like when did you really start feeling that like you didn't care as much, or it was something that you had to do, or
I have always been unpopular with the medical community because I have done these things with my patients. In other words, I saw them as many times as they needed to be seen. I was there for the deliveries. I was there when they needed me. And I have not participated in this doc on deck thing. So, yes, I've been unpopular. And yes, I think, the first time I wanted to be a doctor, I was 12 years old. And for years I thought, well, I couldn't do math. So I flunked bone math. Bone math is for the stupid people. So I flunked it twice. And finally I took it again and I passed it. I got the highest grade in the final test. But that was the thing that really stood between me and medical school. Of course, obviously, I got in. I applied one time to one school and got in. And I didn't think I was going to get in, but I did, obviously.
And we're blessed that you did it.
Yes, I'm happy with this career. I think I've accomplished much of what I wanted to do. I am shifting gears now. What I'd like to do is I'd like to fill the gap. In other words, where we are now and where we need to be. That's where I'm going to spend my time for the next 10, 20, or 30 years, whatever God gives me to spend on this earth and to be able to talk and write.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a futurist.
So tell us about this latest book, The Safe Pregnancy Explained.
Well, we do have, it's a 3-chapter book. It's very, actually it's, Safe Pregnancy Advice. That's our faith group. And anyway, Safe Pregnancy Explained is the Kindle book. Like I said, it's just kind of a preview, but in there we talk about how to find a doctor, how to choose a doctor, interviewing a doctor, the questions you should ask on an interview. We also talk about what to eat, how to eat, when to eat. For example, I've never had a mother who needed to have an NG tube or IV feeding. Every single one has been able to eat after we talked about how, when, where, and what to eat. Mm. So that's been very successful. So that's one of the chapters. The other one is how to take care of yourself when you're pregnant. I think I was successful managing my patients with hypertension because I got them to buy into their treatment. In other words, they had their blood pressure cuffs at home. They could call me as often with their blood pressures as they wanted to. We would talk about what they needed to do to keep their pressure down. For example, there are many women who like to work 12 hours a day. That's bad for blood pressure, very bad. Yeah. So 3 12-hour days is not what you want. What's much better for your blood pressure is 5 6-hour days. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of ways to go about dealing with your blood pressure in ways that prevent a crisis, prevent strokes. Like I said, I've had no moms with strokes.
Wow. Must be very popular.
Yeah.
Doctor, are there any organizations of physicians that think like you do?
I think we're seeing more of that. And let's see, there's a doctor on Twitter. So if you go to that group, you'll be able to see, he's in Montana, I think. His name is Gabe Charbonneau. So look for him. There's going to be more and more because there are a lot of doctors who are tired of this rat race, of being on the squirrel cage.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Wow. It's going to be good. I'm here for it.
Well, of course, most women here, they'll go to Bismarck, which is 85 miles away. We don't do obstetrics here, so I've just been doing general care. But I can tell you that North Dakota is extremely conservative. And, I don't think we have any office in this state that's not Republican oriented. Wow. There was a doctor in Fargo who provided abortion services. However, Moorhead is just right across the Red River. So she's now moved to Moorhead. And of course, Minnesota is very liberal, very flexible when it comes to abortion services. So the people in Fargo don't have far to go. However, the people in the rest of North Dakota would have further to go. They would have to go to Minnesota. I don't think they're going to get very far going to Montana.
No.
And what do you see as a path moving forward, especially, for women where transportation is tough. Taking time off work is tough. Getting out of the state is tough.
One of the problems, and I'm sure that the Supreme Court didn't give this a thought, but we're going to see the maternal mortality rate go up, especially for people who are socioeconomically deprived. These are the people who are going to get hurt and hit the worst. So, yes, I expect to see that this 55 per 100,000 is just going to be going higher. Now, the long-term outcome, I think, is going to be good for everybody. Like I said before, if you look at the people who are coming out to vote, they are 21 to 25-year-old females, typically the group that does not come out to vote. So these polls are going to be very heavily swayed by this pro-choice movement.
Yeah. Well, dang. Hate to have to be like that to get to that point, but I guess looking at everything in a positive note as best you can. Something about the Supreme Court not thinking about it. Yeah. I wonder why they didn't think about it. Is always my question.
They did think about it. They just didn't factor in all of the poor white women that would also die, because right now the economy is actually terrible.
One of the things about the Supreme Court is that they can have whatever opinion they want to have, and you can justify almost any opinion at all. So these opinions are very personal. They do not represent the public. Mm-hmm. However, legislators should represent the public. I mean, they are voted in. They should be responsible to the needs of the voters. So I think we're going to see the composition of our legislatures changing a lot to become pro-choice.
Hopefully. I hope so.
I think so.
It will happen, Sarah. It will happen. I know it will.
Y'all be saying that, but I don't know. Every time so Dr. Allen, I say this almost every day on this podcast. I say on this podcast every week, every time I wake up, I look on my phone and I get embarrassed that I live here. I'm constantly embarrassed that I live here. Every day something dumber happens.
Well, there's no doubt about that. We have been very screwed up for a long time.
And you came on here and you didn't make it any better. You're just like, I'm still odd when you go in there and go like, so you go in there. Wait, you have to say it again to me. But some people, if you're having a baby and you have a C-section and you're there for a short amount of time, which would cost less, right? But the person that stays there longer.
Person that stays there longer with the C-section has a more higher success rate with their baby at like the 6-month checkup, right, than a person who gives a regular, safe, like vaginal birth, because they only get to stay in the hospital for 1 day.
Right. The 3-day people are more likely to be ready to go home than the 1-day people.
Yeah, but then
I'm not gonna lie. That does sound very.
If they stay all that time, what are they going to feed their kids? Like the credit card debt, or?
You mean feed their kids at home?
The bills are going to keep going up every day.
Well, that would be one of the things that we need to work on here.
Mm-hmm.
The shortening the length of stay has done absolutely nothing to decrease.
How about to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. And for all the boys back home listening, when you have a C-section, they are literally cutting. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Assuage my fear. But they are cutting into your whole stomach, moving around everything else that's in there until they get to the baby, popping the baby out of your stomach, and then they just sew all that stuff back up. And then you just sit. You have just a gaping hole in your stomach that is waiting to heal for months and months and months and months. But you get 3 days to stay in the hospital.
Yes, I know it's not fair. Actually, I think going out of the hospital after 3 days is probably a benefit to the patient, but they do need to have support when they go home. In other words, they can't start vacuuming and how
No, you can't do anything.
and be up washing the breast pump at 2 o'clock in the morning. They can't be doing that stuff. They need to have a responsible significant other, whether it's their husband, whether it's, whoever it is. They need help when they go home, and a lot of it, and also understanding. Like I said, I read Twitter quite a bit. Most of the questions that the moms have on there are questions they shouldn't be having. They should know these things before they get out of the hospital.
I would need to know all that before I even got pregnant. I'm like, I need a full binder. Honestly, I need like an associate's in pregnancy before I would even start. It's just no way.
Oh, yes, there is such a thing as a doula, and the doulas are very helpful during labor. When I was in Fargo, there were several what we call lay midwives, and the lay midwife doesn't necessarily go to college for 4, 5, or 6 years. They just learn by doing, and a lot of them do a good job. And I never discriminated against those patients or those providers. And very often, most of the time, they would come into the delivery room or the labor room with their patients, and I would welcome them. They would act as a doula, that is a friend of the mother who was in labor and doing the delivery.
Yeah, I like that. Community.
So scary.
Yeah, and dads are good too in labor and delivery, especially if you get to know them before labor and delivery, which I always did.
I saw on your page, Doc, that you avoid C-sections. Is that correct?
Well, in my first practice, which was in Crookston, Minnesota, when I went there, the C-section rate was a whopping 15%. And I thought that was terrible. So I reviewed the 3 years of C-sections, and I reduced the rate to 10%. I did it by doing VBACs. In other words, moms got an opportunity to deliver a baby vaginally if they had had a previous cesarean section. I also delivered second twins breech, and I delivered vaginal breeches. And I have to say, in Fargo, I had many doctors calling me to help me with their vaginal breeches. We never had any trouble. The thing you have to remember with a vaginal breech is, first, you don't want to wet your pants. And the second thing is you have to deliver the arms. You have to make sure the baby's head is looking backward.
What is a vaginal breech?
That is when the baby comes out butt first from the vagina. So anyway, when the main thing you have to do is keep the head flexed. So this. If you do that, the baby will never deliver. So you just have to remember to do this, and everything works out fine. So I think the art of a vaginal breech delivery is gone. I think that there's a lot of young doctors today, if the second twin is breech, they won't deliver it. One time I delivered twins, they were both breech, and we had no trouble at all with any of it. So breeches, you don't need to be afraid of them, but the problem today is, I think, that the people who are doing the teaching don't know how to do it themselves.
Wow.
That's so interesting, because I was a C-section. I guess I still am, but because of that, my 2 younger siblings had to be C-sectioned as well.
Well, that style comes and goes. 40 years ago, VBAC was very much in style. All I had to do was decide I wanted to do it, discuss it with the patient, and it was done. Never had any trouble, no ruptured uteruses, no blood transfusions, nothing.
What's a VBAC?
That's a vaginal birth after cesarean. So, as a matter of fact, I had one patient and she was a nurse practitioner. She had 4 cesarean sections. She wanted to deliver her 5th baby vaginally, and we did it. No trouble. So there's really, we like to say that you can deliver if you have 2 C-sections, you can deliver the third one vaginally. But I've never had any trouble with the 4th or 5th baby, especially even after no vaginal births before. So I'm not afraid of it, never have been.
Got you. How you doing, Sierra?
Well,
I didn't realize that multiple C-sections were a thing, and now I'm upset.
That's another thing you have to understand when you choose your doctor. Are they willing to give you a vaginal birth after C-section, or are they not?
What makes them just say no?
I'm sorry,
What would make your doctor just say no? We're not going to try the vaginal birth.
There's 2 problems. One is that they don't know how, or they're afraid. The other one is that from time to time, ACOG will raise its head and say, "Oh, you're not going to do VBACs anymore," or the insurance company will come along and say, "Oh, you're not going to do a vaginal birth after C-section in this hospital." So you've got a lot of people interfering with the care that you try to provide a patient.
The insurance companies can make that decision?
Yeah, bro.
Oh,
Medical
God.
malpractice carriers can say you are not going to do a vaginal birth after C-section in this hospital, or we're not going to deliver twins in this hospital.
Oh, my God.
The medical field is, the insurance
What?
company's daddy, y'all.
How,
Remember that?
how
Cross Blue Shield just said, you know what? No, this vagina is mine. You can't. I'm saying no.
how do we lock up these criminals and these insurance companies and medical?
Well,
I'm so upset.
I would say the best thing to do is to do what you're doing. The problem that we're having today, that is the destruction of the patient-doctor relationship, is really a big problem. And in order to repair that, we have to object. And we can object by calling or writing to our legislators. That's the first thing. Also, visit Twitter once in a while. See Dr. Gabe Charbonneau. Also, we're going to get another book out here pretty soon. We have, I do 2 podcasts a week, so if you're interested in those, they are done with Neil Haley. And we talk about things that should make your pregnancy easier and safer, as well as your delivery and your postpartum.
There you go. So I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. You're not only walking the walk, you're doing your best to wait. You're talking the talk and walking the walk. There we are.
That's exactly
Words.
right. I've been walking the walk no matter how unpopular I've been. But I have to say, the patients have been good to me. I got an email a couple days ago from somebody I delivered 2 of her children. They're now 36 and 32 years old.
Wow.
Wow.
And I also delivered quads years ago, and they are now 23 years old. And we went to visit them, and we have a video. And Mom and Dad talked for over an hour, and we got the quads on video, all for our living. And Dad was pretty comical. He said he was in charge of the 4 babies when they got home. Mom went to work. He stayed home and took care of the babies. He said he changed 7,000 diapers a month.
That's hilarious.
I bet.
That's funny.
Wow.
That's
It
so
seems
good.
like you're very emotionally invested, Doc, and I'm curious if that's a rarity as well in your field.
Yes, I have. I really have cared, and I think that has made a big difference. Like I said, we talked about Lauren, who died about 5 hours after she delivered. I was always there for my patients, and I always tried to figure out each one's risk. Probably one of the patients I was most worried about was an 18-year-old girl. She had blood pressure of like 90/40 when she started her pregnancy, but she wound up with a 130/90 I think that one scared me more than anything else. But she did not seize and she did not stroke. But she did get treated and she did do very well.
And everything went okay?
Yep, everything. Baby's fine, mom's fine. So it was, the thing is, that seems to be different today, at least in some parts, and we've talked about this before today, is fragmentation. I would never have asked a neurologist to come in to take care of one of my patients who I thought was high risk. We were taught to take care of them. There's another lady who, this is a lady of color. She was a third-year peds resident. Again, you'd think that if anybody would get good care, it would be a doctor. Well, she died 3 days after she delivered. She died from a ruptured liver. And their excuse was that, oh, we didn't know she was going to have a ruptured liver. Well, that doesn't just happen overnight. However, once the liver capsule ruptures, it is a very serious problem. Sewing the liver is like sewing a hamburger. It doesn't work. So sometimes they put a sock around the spleen, and maybe they could have put a sock around the liver, but anyway, she died, and she died from a ruptured liver.
Awful. I have a question, Doctor. Has there been any changes or improvements in the position that a woman takes when she has a vaginal delivery?
Well, you're absolutely right for getting into that. Prior to about 1750, women were delivered by women, and they were delivered in physiological conditions. For example, they could walk if they wanted to. My dad's aunt delivered 5 children at home. One of them was a placenta previa. She talks about walking up and down the steps as part of her labor pain management. And many women used to do that. I always encourage my patients to walk. That means that I discouraged epidurals. I discouraged IVs that tied them up. I discouraged urinary catheters. I discouraged internal monitors. And I did it because the patients deserve to be able to have some autonomy. They need to be able to get up and walk around if they want to, and if it's safe. And 99% of the time, it is safe.
I'm here for that. I like that.
So what did you enjoy the most about writing your book or books?
Well, again, my goal, and my wife is just really a big part of this, our goal is to bridge the gap. We need to get from where we are to where we need to be.
Right.
And that's the fun part. That's one of the reasons I get up every day and read and write. And so, and right now I'm doing a chapter on depression. We're going to do another, I don't know if it's FOZA, Friends of Zane Adams. Zane's mom committed suicide a month after her birth. So I'm going to be doing a podcast with her, well, actually it's a radio interview, with her mother. In other words, the grandmother of the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be on postpartum depression and preventing suicide. Exactly what are the steps we use to prevent and deal with postpartum depression effectively. So we'll be talking about that.
Wonderful.
Is postpartum depression more of the norm, or is it, what percentage of women have postpartum depression?
If you look at maternal mortality and who dies, you're looking at now about 15 to 20% of those deaths occur from some kind of mental illness, either suicide or drug overdose. Now, this is something that I didn't see much of 40 or 30 or 20 years ago. I never saw a mother commit suicide during pregnancy. I've never seen that. And as a matter of fact, I've never seen one commit suicide after pregnancy. But again, I think it takes commitment from the providing doctor, from the whole healthcare system, the hospital, the nurses, and in particular, the clinic treatment. That's where these people really need to be followed, is in the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of this information would also be good just to have as like part of like your common sense. Every student gets some kind of knowledge of how pregnancy just works.
Yeah.
Like as part of your sex ed or your health class training, like not training, but health class education. Because like some of this stuff, like you're saying, is like should be common sense, like to most people. Like everybody should
I didn't know some of it.
Everybody should have some understanding of like how a C-section works, so that they understand like how painful it is, how stressful it is, how much recovery there is. Everybody should know what postpartum depression is and how it can appear, because everybody knows someone who has a baby, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, your point is well taken, and that's exactly another part of our audience. That is somebody who knows somebody. And incidentally, if you want to see how a C-section works, it's free on our website. You can go to lindemannmd.com and see. It's not a video of a C-section, but it is a diagrammatic representation of a C-section. It's layer by layer, in and out. When I was doing... It's on YouTube. When I was doing these things, the nurses would say, I could do a C-section in 15 minutes and no blood on the floor. So there's ways you can do it that work well, and there are ways you can do it that work badly. But if you want to go to YouTube and see my representation, it's there. And we talk about how to do it, I think, well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with what Sierra was saying. There's a lot of, I was a big learning day for me. I mean, even for someone that worked in the medical field for 8 years, there's a lot of little stuff that I was like, oh wow, I did not know that was a thing. So you're right. More education would probably help things out quite a bit.
And now it takes stress off of you guys.
Education is really important. As a matter of fact, that's one of the ways that I got my patients to buy into their care. You talked about it. And I think that's one of the reasons I had no maternal mortalities, because when my patients, after the first visit and throughout the pregnancy, they knew how to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Lindemann, what did your parents do?
Well, my mom she was a housewife. She was very depressed, and she spent most of her time in bed. I have two sisters who are younger. The youngest one is 7. I took care of her. So I've been taking care of people for a long time. My dad died. I turned 11 in February. He died in March. We were very, we lived on, it was about $200 a month. Our rent was about $15 a month. We spent about $60 a month on food.
Wow.
But we certainly, that $200 a month was enough to live on. I got $60 a month after I went to college. And that really helped me a lot. Of course, $60 today doesn't even buy you milk and eggs.
Honestly.
Wow, that's pretty. That gives me a lot of context too.
Have you considered being a Santa Claus?
I have been accused of looking like Santa Claus. I've also been accused of looking like Burl Ives and a few others. And of course, I don't need padding anymore to look like Santa Claus. I have enough padding of my own. A lot of people We're alive.
If I deliver babies, I'd be like, don't ever call me Santa Claus. I bring more than just the gifts to people.
Right.
All right. I bring in life. Santa Claus can never do this.
You look like an angel to me, Doc.
It's a permanent gift.
Years ago, I wore my white coat into the drugstore, and my beard was a little longer then, and a little boy was in the drugstore, and he looked up at me and he said, "Are you Jesus?" So that's the only time somebody thought I was Jesus. And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm his father." No, I didn't say that.
Is there
No, I said thank you.
is there a much of a percentage difference in the mortality rate depending on what hospital a person goes to?
Well, unfortunately, I think that's true. What I don't know is exactly which hospitals would be the most dangerous and which hospitals would be the least dangerous, but that's a good question. I need to know the answer to it. I can tell you that years ago... Reports. What? Consumer Reports. That's my wife talking with me. Yeah, that's a good place to go, Consumer Reports. Years ago, now there's something we call Group B, and every woman who has Group B gets treated for it with penicillin if she's not allergic in labor. Well, that's only been treated now for maybe 20 years. But before that, we had a lot of deaths, not mothers, but babies from Group B. Because that's the problem, is the babies die from Group B. So eventually the CDC thought of a way to deal with this. They thought of, and then of course ACOG, the American College, endorsed it. So now we have that treatment for everybody. I don't agree with the way they do it because I had developed my own system 20 years earlier, and that had always worked for my patients.
Are there any studies that show whether it's more beneficial to be delivering in a big city, or out in the country, that sort of thing?
Well, unfortunately, yes. You have to have a certain amount of deliveries per year. They say it's about 50, but again, 50 is not that many, considering I had almost that many in my first 1 month. So, but there is that connection between less than 50 and a higher neonatal mortality rate. That's an issue that needs to be addressed because it is not necessary. You can't be afraid of doing obstetrics. And if you are, you sure can't let your patient know you're afraid of it. No matter how worried I was, I tried to walk into that room calm and as dignified as I could. And that's the presentation I always wanted to make to my patients, because there's no point in getting them worried. I mean, more worried.
For real.
Yeah, right.
What does it feel like walking away home after dealing with such a crazy and difficult process?
It's euphoric. One of probably the biggest natural highs you could ever do is to make that delivery, and on the way home, you can feel tremendously satisfied.
Do you miss the drug?
Yeah, I do. I do miss it. And the things we're writing now are a good replacement. I get almost as charged up doing these things, talking with you, talking with the other people who do radio shows, TV shows, podcasts. It's fun, and the message needs to go. I think I started saying a little while ago, this is really a grassroots thing right now. It has to start with consumers. Just like MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving in the early 60s, just like the anti-smoking in the early 60s, people used to say, "Oh, gee, why do you think we should quit smoking?" They thought it was funny. And I can remember all of that stuff. So that's where we are right now. We're still like in 1960 and the no smoking campaign. People are asking, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you already answered this question, but why did you stop your career as a obstetrician? Why did you stop doing deliveries?
Well, I got to 6,000 and I thought, well, maybe I just need a little bit of a change. I did actually go to a small town to revitalize their OB program. And so that's one of the reasons I left Fargo, was to bring obstetric practice to a small town. I was there for 6 years, and they eventually decided to close the program. So then I thought, okay, fine, I can be done with this. So I went on to just being a general practitioner. I have had fun doing that too. I really like to work with people who are socioeconomically disadvantaged because they're very needy and they have a hard time getting care. So it's fun to deliver care to them. Almost as much fun as doing a C-section going home. I have to tell you a story. In about 2 decades I lived in Fargo, I never got a speeding ticket except on my way home.
It's amazing.
So I had one speeding ticket that was on the way home. I'll tell you another story. I was on my way to a delivery and I was trying to ditch the cops. I knew they were following me. And
what do they follow you for?
Why? Because they said, well, I jumped out of my car. I went to the police car and I said, give me a ticket if you want. Just let me get to my delivery. And they said, yes, but you were doing 65 in a 25 zone.
They say, oh, I'm giving you the ticket.
Actually, I didn't get a ticket.
Oh, my God.
You should have said that when you're on the way home, too.
Right. Just keep like, I'm going back to back. I'm busy. I'm a busy man.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the sort of best outlook in your field in like the next 20, 40 years? And what's the worst outlook? Like, where do you see all this going?
It's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to have to be generated from the public. None of the people involved with making this problem are interested in fixing it. As a matter of fact, they're really interested in making it worse. One of the huge problems we have today is the proliferation of CEOs, that is, chief executive officers. They have, in the last 20 years, increased by 3,200%, whereas the physician community has increased 150%. So we have had a big proliferation of people who do absolutely nothing good for healthcare.
Wow.
They're making the most money, right?
Well, some of them make millions a year.
Is it because they're in the politicians' pockets? Is this the lobbyists? Is this big pharma? Is this?
Well, certainly big pharma is a real big problem. I'm going to give you an example of that. We have something called CVS, and they, as far as I'm concerned, they're basically bandits. But they bought Aetna, the insurance company. And the price, it depends on who you read, between $68 and $75 billion. Now, where does that money come from? It comes from you. It comes from the people who buy their insurance, buy their medication.
I'm with Aetna. No.
Well, now you're with CVS.
Oh, shoot. Even worse. No.
They own it.
Wow.
Well, yeah, my wife is reminding me one of the big problems we have is doctors can't own hospitals. So that would be something that would be easily repairable by talking to your legislators, because That's something that was legislated in, I'd say, about 25 or 30 years ago. It could be legislated out. I really do think that the majority of doctors, if they have a choice, will do things that are best for the patients.
Yeah, this should be like what's the thing so they can free themselves, doctors. What do artists have? What is that thing that they were doing for a while?
Poverty?
They were trying to get away from. No, yes, for sure. But not when they were trying to make money by themselves, like they were selling
NFTs?
tickets like NFTs. Yes, doctors, to free themselves from the insurance pimp.
There you
Go ahead and
go.
just
It would be nice to get rid of the insurance pimp. Yes, very, very. I'd be really happy to do that. And again, I think this has to be grassroots. We have to have people objecting to it, like we have women objecting to the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
All right.
I feel like that would
Dr.
make a
Lindemann,
beautiful.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, just your face saying we have to get rid of the insurance pimp would be, I think, a viral clip right there.
I'm gonna catch Dr. Lindemann doing like doctor exams on the corner. Like, hey.
If you can get that to go viral, I'd really like it.
Sorry, Grandpa, what were you saying?
Well, Dr. Lindemann and the crew, I'm going to say goodnight. My bird has been operating on the back of my neck.
Rosie said, "Get off the phone."
I can't take much more of it, but continue without me. And
No. We're all saying goodnight. We're at 8:30. Grandpa, give us your last thought.
Well, Dr. Lindemann, you're a very interesting guest, and I've learned some things that I did not know before, and it was very nice meeting you and talking with you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. So we're all part of the solution now.
Let's do it. Grassroots.
What are your final thoughts, Sierra?
This was so scary and informative, and I appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad we got to make it work this week.
I'm
that we
glad.
could talk to
I'm
you.
sorry about the problem we had getting signed in. We're not used to Riverside, so it took us a while to figure it out. So
No, Riverside's not used to us either. You saw
Yeah.
Brandon and Phines kept popping in and out. I'm like, or Grandpa Bart and Brandon kept popping in and out.
Two
So,
stars for them.
2 stars today, Riverside. Disappointing.
Yeah, they're the
But
podcast
thank you so much.
pimps.
Yeah,
Finest,
right.
finest final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm starting to sound like Grandpa with these every guest that comes on, but very just good examples. I'm just really feeling very lucky to be in the presence of you and hearing your thoughts and what you have to say. I think it was well needed, and I'm glad I got to hear it and got to talk to you. So thank you so much. And yeah.
What about you, Doctor? What's your final thought?
Well, once again, I want to thank you for this opportunity. We, the people, can fix this. We cannot rely on the people we would like to think could fix it, because they will only make it worse. So we, the people, have to make this better.
Amazing. My final thought is you said that the high that you feel from delivering babies, bringing life into the world, nothing is comparable until you started going on these podcasts. And so on our website now, I'll post as good of a high as delivering life into the world. This is yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, I do appreciate it. I know you have many more interesting people to talk with, but I thank you for the opportunity.
Where can people find you, Doc?
Well, the best place is lindemannmd.com. We also have Safe Pregnancy Advice on Facebook.
Amazing. And one more time, if you could promote all the titles of your books so people can go and pay to buy them.
Well, of course, we have the 30-year-old book, which is Modern Medicine, What You're Dying to Know. We should have named it something different, but because people thought it was a comic book, and it's not funny at all. It's the story of what happens when you interfere a lot with patient-provider relationship. And the other one we're going to be doing is Pregnancy Your Way. And so that's not out yet, but it'll be on our website. It'll be available.
And we have Safe Pregnancy Explained.
Yes, and we have the Kindle book is Safe Pregnancy Explained. That's just a few chapters. Jack Canfield has called it brilliant. I'm not sure whether it's because he figured we would pay him for that or not, but anyway, it was something that we were happy to get from him.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you so much again for coming on. Grandpa's gone, but I do love him. I love all you guys, and I'm very grateful. So have a great night, everybody.
Podcasting with Grandpa Bart and Rosie, always on his shoulder. This is Grandpa and Chill.
Grandpa and Chill is brought to you by your hosts, Brandon Fox, Bart Frank, and Phines Jackson. Our producer is Sierra Doss. To watch and listen to full episodes of the show and follow us on social media, visit grandpaandchill.com. That's grandpaandchill.com.